cucumbers, peppers, squash, tomato. I'm going all in this year. I already have a bunch of brassicas in the backyard. Watermelon, greens, and microgreens. Get into it. So how exactly do we start planning our 2024 garden? Well, the first most important factor in starting your garden is having a garden journal. This journal will hold all of the information to help you through your gardening journey. The first thing that we need to decide is what type of vegetable we are going to be gardening and the specific variety. I actually just used this guide from my website to figure out what I want to personally be growing in my 2024 garden, just because it has all of the planting specifics. These charts are designed to tell you what the specific variety of each plant tastes like to see if you're even going to like it. It also has row spacing, when to start the germination process, and then harvest time as well, based on your specific zone. I'm going to show you how to calculate when you need to start your plants, but we first need to figure out what zone you are in. There's brief zoning descriptions on my website, but I would also suggest going on to the USDA website to figure out exactly what zone you are in, and that way you'll have a more specific time on when to start your plants. Now that I've chosen every single variety of vegetable that I want to choose, I write down 5 very important things under each variety of vegetable. So in my journal, I actually have notes from my 2023 garden, and then I've also wrote what I want to do for my 2024 garden. Okay, I've chosen a lot of different varieties in here. The very first thing that I like to write under the specific variety of vegetable is when I need to start germination. The germination process can take anywhere from 7 to 14 days. The start date of when you germinate your seeds is going to be the start date that you will write in your journal. For your start date, this is going to be your germination date. I always wrote indoor just because I start my seeds indoor. I wrote January 12th, 7 to 12 days of germination. So that's when I want to start germinating this green wave mustard inside. To calculate the start date, first determine what zone you are in and your last frost of the season. Here's an example for Zone 8A, where the last frost date is roughly April 1st. The start date will be the germination period plus 6 to 8 weeks before April 1st, making it the time period between January 28th to February 3rd. I usually start in mid-January, early February for my summer crop. So after I determine my start date, what I like to do then is I like to determine my transplant date of when I'm going to be transplanting my little plants outside into the garden. Usually my transplant date is about 8 to 9 weeks after my start date. So this gives me the appropriate time span to allow the seedlings to grow indoors and then transplant outside 8 to 9 weeks later after the last frost. So now that I have determined and wrote down my start date and my transplant date, there's a third thing that I like to write down, which is going to be my row spacing. Row spacing always helps me to determine where I'm going to be placing something in my garden. You know, certain plants require certain specific things, such as specific nutrients. The larger the plant takes more nutrients from other plants, so you have to be careful of where you're planting things. If you need any type of guidance on row spacing, it is on my website at allthingsgirly.org. The fourth thing that I like to write down is days to harvest. Usually I write down, let's see, for like my tomato plants, I usually have roughly 85 days until harvest. Now, I'm always confused about the harvest date. It always seems a little off to me. I always like to write it down anyways. And lastly, the fifth thing that I like to write down, if it requires full sun, shade, or partial sun. This is also going to help me to determine where I'm going to be placing these different vegetables in my garden. So now that we have written the specific variety, cantaloupe honey rock, for example, we've also wrote when we're starting the seeds, when we're transferring the seeds outside, how much sun it requires, row spacing, and then days until harvest. There's a fifth thing that I like to do. I like to actually draw out where I'm going to be placing everything. So we have specific tomato plants over here on the right side of the garden because the sun actually comes up from this way. And I like to figure out where I'm going to be placing specific varieties based on the sun angle in the summer because it does come up from this way. And we need some varieties to have more sunlight than others. But that's why I like to draw a visual of where I'm going to be placing everything. I have beans in the back, you know, zucchini, yellow squash over here. I have hot peppers in the front because these require a lot of sun. And then what is this? Let's see. Oh, my pickles. My cucumbers, yes. And then radishes, carrots in the raised bed, potato bags over here. And then I usually like to do my lettuce indoors, so we'll talk about that later. And one of the most important things that a beginner gardener needs to remember or start actually looking at now is where the angle of the sun is going above your house, apartment, anywhere that you're living. You need to figure out where the sun is coming from to determine where you're going to be placing your specific vegetables and fruit. This is why the winter garden is over here instead of the summer. But I also wanted to do a crop cover over there just so I can like regenerate the soil. So that's what's going on over there. Ignore the dead tomato plants. I know, I'm horrible, whatever. But this is why the winter garden is over here. So make sure you're able to determine where the sun is coming up from in the summer to perfectly hit your garden. Now, the sun comes from this way now, like over here, which is why I placed the winter garden right here. So I hope that made sense. And I'm back inside, and that's pretty much all I really wanted to go over today was the specifics on how to start your 2024 garden and why it's so important to have a gardening journal. Like I said, all of the specifics are on my website, so check out allthingsgirly.org if you want to determine what type of vegetable or fruit you want to be planting in your 2024 garden, and row spacing, what it tastes like, all of the descriptive elements for each type of variety. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, and I'm so glad that you were able to join me and figure out what you're going to be planting. And I just wanted to say Happy New Year, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.